What can ancient religious manuscripts tell us? The Dead Sea Scrolls. One of the last remaining obscure parts of the Dead Sea Scrolls has been deciphered by researchers in Palestine. 60 tiny fragments were pieced together over a period of a year, identifying the name of a festival marking the change between seasons. It also revealed a second scribe correcting mistakes made by the author. The 900 scrolls, written by an ancient Jewish sect, have been a source of fascination since they were first discovered in a cave of Qumran in 1947. The collection is considered the oldest copy of the Hebrew Bible ever found, dating to at least the 4th century BC. So why did the Dead Sea Scrolls reveal, and what is so important about the Dead Sea Scrolls? Which books are in the Dead Sea Scrolls? Before we begin, make sure to smash the like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more amazing videos. Israeli archaeologist Yuval Peleg halts his jeep where the jagged Judean hills peter out into a jumble of boulders. Before us, across the flat, calm Dead Sea, the sun rises over the mountains of Jordan. The heat on this spring morning is already intense. There are no trees or grass, just a few crumbling stone walls. It is a scene of silent desolation, until, that is, the tourists in hats and visors pour out of shiny buses. They have come to this harsh and remote site in the West Bank, known as Qumran, because this is where the most important religious texts in the Western world were found in 1947. The Dead Sea Scrolls, comprising more than 800 documents made of animal skin, papyrus, and even forged copper, deepening our understanding of the Bible and shed light on the histories of Judaism and Christianity. Among the texts are parts of every book of the Hebrew canon, what Christian calls the Old Testament, except the book of Esther. The scrolls also contains a collection of previously unknown hymns, prayers, commentaries, mystical formulas, and the earliest version of the Ten Commandments. Most were written between 200 BC and the period prior to the failed Jewish revolt to gain political and religious independence from Rome that lasted from AD 66 to 70. Predating by 8 to 11 centuries the oldest previously known Hebrew text of the Jewish Bible. The Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered in 11 caves, 5 by Budean, 6 by archaeologists, on the upper northwest shore of the Dead Sea. The area is 13 miles east of Jerusalem and is 1,300 feet below sea level. Jerusalem is 2,400 feet above sea level. Near the caves are the ancient ruins of Qumran, which was excavated in the early 1950s and appears to be connected with the scrolls. The scrolls so far discovered represent a library of over 900 documents, representing as many as 350 separate works and multiple copies, many of which are represented only by fragments. Cave 4 alone contained 520 texts and 1,500 fragments. This library contains copies of the Scripture, Isaiah scroll, copies of other non-canonical books known as the Enoch, and holy writings which the group itself produced, rules of faith, commentaries on scriptures, and many other fascinating works otherwise unknown to us. In Cave 3, there was one copper scroll found, which contains a list of 64 hiding places where gold, silver, sacred objects, and other scrolls were hidden. The major intact texts from Caves 1 and 2 came into Israeli hands and were published by the late 1950s. They are now in the Shrine of the Book Museum in Jerusalem. The bulk of the scrolls were in Jordanian control and were placed with a team of Christians, mostly Catholic, non-Jewish scholars, who over the next 4 decades published 8 volumes of material. The team was left intact by the Israelis after the Six-Day War, 1967. The publication schedule was constantly delayed, and many outsiders found the official team to be arrogant and unyielding. The team was expanded in the 1980s and was much more broadly based, finally including Jewish scholars and a more open approach to sharing materials. As much as 40% of the scrolls, mostly fragment from Cave 4, remained unpublished and unreleased, until pressure mounted in the 1980s. A breakthrough occurred in the fall 1991. The photos were published by the Biblical Archaeological Society in a non-profit edition. A computer reconstruction based on a concordance was announced. The Huntington Library pledged to open their microfilm files of all the scroll photographs. The scrolls are of great interest to both Jews and Christians. They represent a non-rabbinic form of Judaism and also contain many important parallels to the Jesus movement. Final interpretations of these materials, with the newly released scrolls fully factored in, remains open. Scrolls related to those found in the caves around Qumran were also found at Masada, the Herodian fortress taken over by Jewish zealots after the fall of Jerusalem in 70 CE, and finally taken by the Romans in 73 CE. An ostracon, inscribed pottery shard, contained a 16-line letter written in 68 CE. By someone giving their property over to the community, was discovered at the site of Qumran in January 1996. The majority of the Dead Sea Scrolls are extra-biblical writings, but among the more than 900 scrolls are over 200 copies of Old Testament books. Some books of the Bible had dozens of copies. The Qumran caves contained 39 copies of Psalms, 33 copies of Deuteronomy, 24 copies of Genesis. There's at least one copy of every Old Testament book, except for Esther. While the naked eye could tell that the scrolls were written in red and black ink on parchment, scholars wanted to know how the ink was made. At the University of California, Davis, researchers used a cyclotron to identify the exact materials used. They learned that the black ink was carbon black, made from the soot of olive oil lamps. Some of the scrolls used red ink, made from a mineral called cinnabar. More than 70% of the scrolls were written in Hebrew. Most of the others were written in Aramaic, but a small number of them were written in Greek. The scroll from the fourth Qumran cave mentions a mysterious Son of God figure and contains an apocalyptic prophecy. The scroll is known as both the Son of God text and the Aramaic Apocalypse. Scholars debate whether the Son of God refers to Jesus or an enemy of God. The content is unclear. There appears to be a large section missing from the scroll, so the debate will likely never be resolved. There may be a guide to hidden treasure. One unique scroll scholars found is made of copper and a tiny bit of tin, known as the Copper Scroll. It lists 64 locations, 63 of which contain items of gold or silver. The 64th is a backup copy of the treasure map. None of these treasures have been found, and scholars still debate as to whether or not they actually exist. Scholars can't say for sure who wrote the scrolls. Scholars have not found any definitive record of the scrolls' original keepers, so scholars have to use less definitive evidence to determine who wrote the scrolls. Most scholars can at least agree that the scrolls originated from a Jewish sect. Some have argued that the scrolls were the work of first-century Christians, but their case is far less compelling. The best conjecture are a group called the Essenes, or possibly Sadducees. There is plausible evidence for both. Since the moment they were found, these ancient documents have been shrouded in controversy. The discovery itself began with a boy who threw a rock. 70 years later, countries and political entities still vie for possession of them, and the ways scholar and the public access them have completely changed as technology has advanced.